Greetings and welcome back to Doctor Who Revisited, where I go through every single episode of Doctor Who from 1963 all the way to 2022 and review them. And today we are continuing our discussion with the Season of the Master, as I like to call it, Season 8, with the Mind of Evil. Now, first things first, bit of an elephant in the room here. This is one, and I thought we were done with these, but this is another one of those cases of Jon Pertwee era episodes that sort of got lost in the mix with this sort of became missing episodes. But the main difference here is that the black and white versions of those episodes survived. And for the first couple of times I watched it in the black and white version. However, somehow I got lucky this time and got to find a fully colorized version of all 6 parts of the serial, which I'm very, very grateful I was able to come across, because it's a really, really great episode, and it's really one of those episodes that need to be seen in full color, if not for any other reason, and for the Doctor's outfit. I love the Doctor's outfit in this episode, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the resurgence of the Master. So apparently, with the Master now being stuck on Earth, without TARDIS's dematerialization circuit, he kind of has to try to find a way to get back at the Doctor from within this limited area of just planet Earth, and I think the way he does that is really good. Now, before we jump into the actual plot of what the Master does, there's something else we kind of need to address with this episode, is that this episode is a 6-parter, and here's the reason why I bring that up, is that this episode basically has 2 almost completely unrelated storylines, both happening at the same time, with the Doctor and Jo in the prison that I'm forgetting the name of at the moment, and we got the Brigadier and the rest of the unit people overseeing this peace conference. Now, both of these different storylines, any other day, could have been 2 completely different serials with 4 parts each, and for some reason they decided to bring them back and bring them together into one serial that is a 6-parter. This sort of thing kind of happens a lot, especially with these 6-part Doctor Who serials, but I think the way that they merged the 2 storylines together and connected the dots between the 2, I think works really, really well. Let's talk a little bit about the Peace Conference storyline first. I love the way the Brigadier handles this type of situation. Like, the Brigadier, for the most part, his job is to keep planet Earth safe from alien menaces. That's why he founded UNIT, that's why he's working so closely with the Doctor, and that's why his biggest threat right now is, of course, the Master. And every once in a while, he's just getting called on to do these, for lack of a better word, menial tasks of just looking over a peace conference and making sure that all the senators and delegates from the peace conference get to their meetings safe. And what I like about this episode is I love the way he handles the situation. Like, even though that's not really a situation he wants to be a part of, he still takes it in his stride and does the best job that he possibly could do. And again, I love his detective work all throughout that particular part of the storyline, realizing that when the Chinese delegate is murdered, he figures out who does it just by looking at the clues around him. So when this character Chin Lee shows up and tells him that it was all his fault and that he's to blame for it, and she tells him the story of how she called him immediately, he just calls off the investigation and does his own private investigation, realizing that she actually lied to him. And I just love the look in his eyes when he knows she's lying to him, and he asks her the questions that she cannot provide a proper answer for. And obviously later in the episode you learn that the reason she was lying is because she was controlled by the Master, and she's really a nice person underneath all that. It's just, the mind control thing was really inhibiting her. Now, that is really the positives that I can say about this story. I love the Doctor sort of shaming the Brigadier in front of the other Chinese person speaking his language in a language that the Brigadier doesn't understand. I love certain moments like that. And I do love the friendship that the Doctor and the Brigadier have had through several different incarnations of the Doctor. But again, with long-lasting friendships, you always have these subtle moments, I should say, where you get to take jabs at each other and laugh at each other's expense behind, with other people behind your friend's back. And these sort of things are going to happen. Now, the negative I could say about this storyline is that at some point, the whole peace conference storyline just gets completely dropped in favor of the other storyline with the prison. And that's kind of sad. It almost feels like they didn't properly wrap up the storyline with the peace conference. And I get it, it was all just to set up the dismantling of the missile, which was eventually stolen by the Master and was almost used on the peace conference. So there's a reason why that storyline is in the background, and the reason why it's the B plot, but I don't think they resolved that plot well enough to justify it taking so much screen time from the regular serial. And again, this could have been a 4-part story. This could have been 2 4-part stories, with one focusing on the prison and the other one focusing on the peace conference. But having said that, let's get back to the prison, which I think is the superior storyline. That's why it's the A-plot. That's why the majority of the serial takes place in this prison. And first of all, it's a pretty scary concept that someone has developed a machine that could wipe out people's minds and can just erase all the negative thoughts from a person's mind. That's terrifying. And again, it's another thing that the Master does. A lot of things that the Master does happen to be pretty scary and terrifying. That's why he's the greatest Doctor Who villain of all time, arguably. But, like, you take away a person's bad side, is that really a good thing? And, like, this opens on so many moral questions of, like, what gives you the right to do that to a person? And will that person actually be better off having done that to him? I mean, it's tantamount to lobotomy when you really think about it. It's mental and psychic lobotomy without actually doing anything physical to the person's brain. You essentially lobotomize the person. Like, what does that do to a person's mind? And obviously we see the results of that when it's done to the Frankenstein's monster-looking person that becomes the main friend to Joe Grant in the episode. And unfortunately, the unfortunate casualty of this episode is like, look at how this guy carries himself now. Look at how he's reacting and responding to things. He's basically become, like, regressed into a child. Like, that is not a very good thing to do to a person. And again, no criminal, no matter how rotten their brain is, no one deserves to have that happen to him. And not only was that a thing that the Master did, but also the creation that the Master created, I should say, eventually ended up developing a mind of its own, and it essentially sort of becomes another one of those AI is going to take over the world, is going to grow sentience, realize that it doesn't need humans to tell it what to do, and just eventually turn on its creators, which is exactly what happens to the Master at certain points in this episode. Like, a lot of the times, the machine starts to lash out, or rather the mind parasite, I should say, lashes out at whoever is in the room with it, forces people to die from their biggest fears. And, like, again, that's another terrifying thing that the Doctor now has to deal with. Dangers that are technically not in the room, but very clearly are. Like the guy dying from bites and scratches from rats, the guy drowning in a perfectly dried room, the Doctor seeing the flames of a planet being destroyed, which of course is a reference to Inferno, when the Doctor himself recently mentions that he saw an entire planet going up in flames, witnessing the death of the alternate planet Earth in the Inferno universe, in the Inferno serial a couple of episodes ago. And then it just sort of doubles down on it the second time he's forced to live through all this stuff, with seeing images of the Daleks and Ice Warriors and Cybermen and Zarbi and the War Machines. Even though we technically don't really get to see the Daleks a lot during the Jon Pertwee era, we kind of do get to see them in this episode. And it was really great of seeing all these great villains from the past re-emerging and reasserting themselves in the Doctor's psyche to let us know that the Doctor doesn't necessarily have a set, proper fear in him. It's like the fear of all these other things together weighs heavily on his head. It's like all these different monsters that he has fought and defeated could come back at some point or another and reassert themselves. And so, in a way, this is very similar to the Harry Potter thing with the Bogart, of like, the thing that Harry, or in this case the Doctor, fear the most is the concept of fear itself, which I think is very, very deep, especially for this for the character of the Doctor, and it's very, very fitting that the Doctor is not afraid of one in specific thing. It's not like Indiana Jones is only scared of snakes, or Batman being scared of bats, ironically, but just all these different things that generate fear in the hearts and minds of other people. All these things together are what scare the Doctor. And in a way, I get that it's very, very unintentional, but in a way this really does set up future events for the Doctor, like the Time War and the destruction of Gallifrey. So not only he sees an entire planet going up in flames and smoke, that's his home planet, and the Daleks did have a major part to play in that conflict. So, in a way, this whole scene of the Doctor facing the mind parasite works on so many different levels, and that's what makes this mind parasite so incredibly dangerous, to the point where later in the episode it sort of not only just develops a mind of its own, it also develops a way to transport itself around the prison and attack different people with the power of TV static. There really is no other way I can explain that. They're basically just weaponizing TV static and using it to kill people. That's a bit ridiculous, and I do have to admit the effect of the mind parasite teleporting itself with the whole screen just going all wobbly, and then the thing just disappears and reappears somewhere else that goes really wobbly. That's a bit clunky, but I mean, again, those are the effects that they had to work with at the time, and really that is the precedent of how Doctor Who visual effects are, and that's why, obviously, there's the stigma of the Doctor Who visual effects. Not necessarily a negative stigma, it's just really a funny stigma of Doctor Who visual effects, especially in the classic series. Another thing that I really appreciate in this episode is Jo, and the fact that there are these two prison takeovers by the prisoners. They do it twice, and you know what? I just love that Jo never really lost her cool in either one of those two prison takeovers. As a matter of fact, in the first prison takeover, she kinda is the one to end it. Like, she waits for the guy to turn his back around, and then she kicks the gun out of his hand, and she's the one that ends the prison break, or the prison takeover. Like, how great is that? Like, Jo, this little tiny 19-year-old girl, just beats the guy. Like, I love that. That's a really, really great Jo Grant moment. Unfortunately, it sort of gets diminished a couple of minutes later when the Master shows up and the whole prison takeover happens again. This time it's more successful. But again, it was because it was led by the Master this time. So, you kind of really have to step up your game anyway. And again, I just love all these really subtle moments with the Doctor and Jo sitting in that prison room, of them just sharing the food and water, whatever they have available to them. And this is another thing we're going to get a lot with the Third Doctor and Jo Grant going forward. It's just these tender moments of them being trapped somewhere or locked up in chains, and the Doctor just tries to calm her down by telling her stories of his past, stories of his childhood. That's of course how we learn about the Hermit, which was going to be a much more important character later down the line in further Doctor Who mythology. But yeah, this is another thing that we get a lot with the Third Doctor and Jo, and why I think they are the perfect combination with each other. And while I love the Brigadier, he's one of the best Doctor Who characters of all time, and while I still contend that the best Doctor Who companion is Sarah Jane Smith, which was introduced in the Third Doctor's era, I just think that she's more of a every Doctor's companion, especially the 4th and 10th Doctors. But to me, I think the best 3rd Doctor companion is, of course, Joe Grant, mainly because of how well they work with each other and how we get so many good moments like this of the Doctor and Joe just having a heart-to-heart while being imprisoned somewhere. I really, really do appreciate that, and I love that we got so many good moments of them together during the Jon Pertwee era. And that is about it. That is all I can say for this serial. Again, it's another really solid master story. I just wish they didn't overbloat it too much with introducing 2 completely unrelated storylines and into the same one. I think they could both of these storylines could have worked very well as 2 4-parters, but as a 6-parter, I think this is really, really good. It's not as good as Terror of the Autons, but it's still very, very good, and I had a lot of fun watching it. So that is all I can say for this episode. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. So until then, I am the Master, and you will obey me. You will obey me and only me. Hi there. Thank you for watching the video. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends. I'll see you next time.